we're going to move on to item 5, items for council discussion and possible action. Item A, assignment of sergeant at arms at the council meetings. Mr. Wood and Mr. Machak's request.
We kind of went over that before last week when we had a meeting, and a lot of the stuff says you should have a sergeant at arms. And I was just saying, do we need sergeant at arms? Has anybody thought about whether or not we should have a sergeant at arms? And then we got into the whole, who is the sergeant at arms and does he or does he not carry a gun?
So do you have anything else to discuss on it tonight?
No, I just want to get a definitive answer from the council. Do we need one or do we not need one?
We've had a volunteer already. If you remember when we introduced the secretaries, they're an individual, and for other reasons, I don't know if you're familiar with their rules, because they need jobs sometimes, so to speak, to be able to carry their weapon or something like that. And we have a volunteer, right, actually quite well. Like, you heard him, I have to reconfirm it, but as long as we set the rules up here, where we allow him to come in with his weapon and everything, and he can perform here, and actually he has volunteered to perform other duties for the city too.
Who's the individual?
He is a, well, he's a policeman, for what there is. He is currently looking for a position that allows him to continue in that mode.
He has the proper license.
Yes, he has the licenses that we're talking about. We just need to establish something here in the city that would allow him to work here and give him that requirement. We just can't just walk in and become a police force. We have to establish that. We'd have to help out more in that speaker. But that was what he was looking for in addition to other things. That was, he made it very plain that that's really one of the items he would like to pursue. So if we need a constable, that was something that we consider.
What do you mean by when he says that we have an individual that would volunteer? What does the word volunteer mean?
Volunteer, as in volunteer, like you and I.
So he wouldn't charge him?
Anybody else?
Is sergeant at arms, is that a position you have to make through ordinance? Or is it a position that is just hired to the city?
I defer to Mr. Steve Wood.
Yeah, I would think that you would need to create a position, or at least adopt a policy of some sort regarding the duties of the sergeant at arms. It's going to be volunteer, and probably need to discuss liability issues for anybody who's volunteer and bringing a firearm, because you certainly don't want to create liability for the city if this person decides he sees a suspect and pulls out a gun and bad things happen, and all of a sudden we have a lawsuit. So we would need to talk about policy issues and probably waivers of liability and that kind of thing.
Can you go back just a little bit in history? The city used to have a marshal, and I don't remember the laws on it, but the state changed some of the laws on it, and I don't know if we actually had one here. I believe we did, but I can't remember that. But every city had a position as a marshal, just like an old one. That's part of the old arrangement until they changed the laws on it. Was that any different than just saying we wanted somebody here? We want to, as a marshal, we can create that same position.
Well, I'm not familiar with what you guys had before or how you set it up.
There was no ordinance to my knowledge setting that up. It was just something that was allowed through all towns at that time.
Well, like I said, it would be my recommendation that we have some serious discussions about policy issues. I don't know whether this person, he may have does he have a peace officer's license? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, so that's good, because the peace officer at least has gone through some training and that type of thing. I was talking about a CHL holder. But yeah, I still think we would need to do it by policy.
Yeah, are we better off if we said, okay, this is a paid position, $50 to $100 per meeting versus a volunteer, because then it's actively employed by the city?
Well, there may be a greater insulation for the city for a volunteer than for an employee. Cities get sued all the time when their police officers discharge their weapons in negligent manners. And I don't know if those same rules would apply to a volunteer. I've not actually looked at a volunteer. Most of the time when we're talking about city volunteers, we're talking about the library volunteer or something like that, where there's not that level of liability associated with it. So I would want to look into what kind of liability a city could incur based on a volunteer who's carrying a firearm. But right now, I'm just, what I know right now, I think the city would probably be in a better position if that person were a volunteer.
I guess the elephant in the room is, what's the driving need? I've been on council for 8 years. I've never seen a situation hostile enough to warrant the need for an armed sergeant arms or any other sergeant arms. The gavel wrap usually brings everybody into line. I have been in contact with the sheriff's department, and off-duty officers will work for about $30 to $35 an hour, depending on what you want them in uniform or out of uniform, how you want to set it up. They're always looking for more work. If there was a need or a certain meeting that I guess thought might call for it, at that time I think it could be considered, but I mean, I've never seen a need in this city for that.
Well, I preface it by saying, I'm just reading some stuff about government code that says Sergeant Arms does this or that or the other. And I'm saying, do we need one? That was the whole purpose of the comment. I started out with that. Do we need one? I'm not saying we do, just asking a question.
Anything else on that item?
Well, I regret that I didn't hear the discussion last week, if there was one. Right, this is the first that I had thought about it, but I'd be concerned about a gun. I don't see the need of a firearm in this room, off the top of my head.
Any other discussion? You want to move on then?
Yeah.
Move on. Item B, discussion and action regarding permanent city hall facilities, including discussion of existing facilities and the possible locations and/or